Alright, what's up guys? This is Josh and today I'm going to be making a tutorial on MythicMobs drop tables. I think there's a bit of confusion on how they work logistically, and so I'm going to make this to try and clear that up a bit. So we have our tools pulled up to try and explain this here. So let's just talk about real quick. We're already going to assume that you have mythic mobs and you know the basic idea of how you make mobs, and you might even have a basic idea of drop tables. I'm just going to make this probably pretty quick tutorial and explain a little bit more on exactly how they work. So as we know, we have the obvious format. You put the mob name and then you can put the drops on your mob. This is a drop table, and drop tables are kind of what I want to focus on because there's a couple of different ways you can do them. So let's talk real quick about what drop tables can drop. Obviously, we have everything that's shown here on the manual, MMO items, they can run commands, all these other ones, and they're all handled the same. It doesn't matter what you use here. I'm going to focus more on the logic of how drops are picked. So first of all, let's look down here. By default, the drop tables that are given to you, we give you this one, and we give you this one. So the Skeleton King drops when it gets called on the mob. It will drop this drop table 100% of the time, and it will drop it one time, and this is the drop table that it's calling. It will also drop some experience and some heroes XP. Now, when this drop table gets called one time, it will run this whole thing, which means it's going to drop between 1 and 2, because min of 1 and max of 2. Now, the chances are really what makes this interesting, because depending on how you set your items determines how these numbers are called. And actually, this format is kind of a bit funny because of the way that min items and max items works. So let's take a look here side by side at how they work. So if you set, like I was messing with down here, if you set total items on a drop table, it will obviously determine how many items it's going to drop. So we're going to change this to 1 for testing purposes. So it's going to drop 1 item every time we call this test table. Now, when you use total items opposed to just like not using this line at all and you're dropping these things, when you use total items, it changes all this to what we call weights. So for simplicity of explaining weights, I'm going to do it like this. A diamond has a weight of 1, an iron ingot has a weight of 2, a coal has a weight of 3, and a gold nugget also has a weight of 2. So let's look at this a little bit mathematically and see how it's going to work, right? So with weights, when this drop table is called, it's going to pick one item. Now the way it picks that item, it takes all of these weights and adds them up like so. So we have 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 2 as what we defined here. So now, obviously, this gets us up to 8. So the overall weight of this drop table is going to equal 8. That's pretty basic math to understand. So we have an overall weight of 8. So the way this works is that it's picking one item and the weight is 8. So the diamond here has a 1 in 8 chance of being picked, or I think it's like 12.5% or something. Iron ingot would have a 2 in 8 chance, which is obviously 25%. And then the coal has a 3 in 8 chance, which is 37.5%. And then our final item back down to the gold nugget is going to go back to having a 2 out of 8, which is a 25%. Now, if we add all these percents up, we get 25, 25 is 50, 37.5 and 12.5 is also 50. We have 100%. We've filled our requested weight, and that's how weights, they can also be called coefficients, but that's how these work. So in my opinion, doing your drop tables like this is probably the easiest way to do it. We're gonna turn down these zombie sounds real quick. But yeah, doing your drop tables like this is almost definitely the easiest way because you have, as you can see, it's quite easy to calculate what you want here. So if we add one more item here just to get a nice even 5, so we'll put a, I don't know, water bucket. We'll give it a weight of 2, or nah, we'll give it a weight of 3 because it's not that rare, right? So now we have 3 out of, now that 8 changes to an 11 because we just added 3 more to our original uh, equation, I guess. So now this changes our percents completely. And actually, you know what? That's a really gross number to work with, 11. So we're going to move that back down to 2, make this 2, and then we're going to replace all these and make it 10. This way I can explain an easy way to figure out how you want to do this. So now that we have a total weight of 10 in our table, um, we know that this item has 10%, 20%, 30%, 20%, 20%. And since our table is always picking one item, you don't really have to worry about nothing getting called, because when you use total items, it's saying, okay, you're dropping something 100%. Now let's just run through these weights and pick which one we want to drop. I think that concept makes sense. So let's show you that in action, and I'll also show you a handy command for testing. So we're going to change all these to 1, except for our coal, which is going to have a coefficient of 2. So now we have 1, 1, 1, and 2, which comes out to be 5. We've got a 20% chance, 20% chance, 20% chance, and 40% chance. Let's save that. Let's come in game. Let's reload. Let's this is for Mythic Mobs items, get, and then we're going to run testing drop. So you can actually call a drop table as an item. Now let's run it, I don't know, 1,000 times. All right, so let's sort of organize our inventory enough to explain what just happened. So what we just simulated there was killing a boss that had this drop table 1,000 times, and this command is great for testing because, I mean, for obvious reasons. So let's compare what we just got to our drop table. According to this drop table, we should get coal 40% of the time, the other ones 10 or 20% of the time. So it comes down to be the coal should roughly be double any other material, which if you look at this, that is pretty accurate. For all of our materials, we got exactly 3 stacks plus 8, 8, and 17. And actually, the fact that gold and iron out of 1,000 dropped the exact same amount is quite impressive. But if we look here, doubling this to get three full stacks, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, which doubles these, and then, throw in 8. So we're like 9 off of perfectly doubling what we expected, which when you're running a test 1,000 times, being 9 off is really not that bad at all. But yeah, that's how weights work. So let's take a look real quick at some of the other options that we have here. So if you set max items on a table, it's obviously going to define the maximum number of items that can drop. When you're using max items, this does not mean that it will always drop 2. So let's change all these chances to 1% instead of the weights. So as of Mythic Mobs, I think 4.4 maybe, you can use percents instead of decimals, so it's nicer. Let's reload. Let's clear my inventory. Now let's run this drop table again 1,000 times. Now, as you can see, we got, I mean, that's 48 and 59. We got almost exactly 64 items when we ran the drop table 1,000 times. Now it's because when you don't use total items, and when you only use max items or you only use min items, it's just telling you that, okay, you can roll up to this many and it will stop when you hit that many, but you're not guaranteed to hit that many items. So what we had here is we ran it 1,000 times, and each time it ran, it just rolled each item separately, and if it succeeded in dropping, it added 1 to the max items, and if we ever ran one drop table and it picked 2, somehow the odds that it ran a 2%, a 1%, or a 1%, a 1% in the same drop table is obviously very, very, very low. But if that ever happened, it would say we rolled the gold nugget, it succeeded, then we rolled the coal, it succeeded, we would have hit our 2 max items, and it would not roll these 2, which it's rare that it would hit these 2 at the same time. So max items, when you only define that, or if we change this to min items, this would react very differently than when we had total items. So let's clear our inventory, let's reload, and let's run it 1,000 times again. So now obviously this was significantly different, because when you have min items, it will do the exact same thing as max items, except it will keep rolling this table over and over and over again until each time out of 1,000 it picked two. So as you can see, we have well over 1,000 items here because we should have, technically 2,000 because we rolled it 1,000 times and it picked two. But the tricky thing here is that min means that it could have rolled more than two because it only defines the minimum number of items. If you only set minimum items, it will keep running through this list until the minimum items is reached, but then it can finish the drop table. And, you could hypothetically get a little bit more than 2,000 drops. So let's talk about what this line means. Like right here. If you set both min items and max items, then suddenly we stop getting this weird, iterate through 1,000 times. Instead, we get it to convert back to the weight system. So just like with total items, where you have, you can drop, you're dropping 5 items, 100%. You can use min and max, and that will define a range of items that can drop, but it also converts back to the weight system, which again, in my opinion, at least, is much easier to work with than the percent format, because doing weights is just easier to throw on a spreadsheet and be like, okay, well, if I can arbitrarily define these numbers to be 100, 200, 300, 200, and 300, and then come out with 1,000. This gives me tons of wiggle room to add more items in here and change weights, which is, ideally what you want, flexibility. These are not actually the percents that they have to drop. These are the weights instead, which means that, I'm not gonna try and plug this in because I didn't calculate this prior, but if we added all this up, we would get what 1.9, 1.91, and then the chances of them dropping are 0.01 out of what did I say? 1.91, and then it would be 0.1 out of 1.91, and then it's 1 out of 1.91, and 0.8 out of 1.91, which obviously is a little bit uglier than my examples up here. I would not recommend doing weights like this because, as I said just a few seconds ago, you can arbitrarily define your weights as anything you want because you're essentially putting them up against each other. You're not putting them up against a 100% scale, which makes things a little bit easier to balance. But that's about it. Obviously, we have two options here that most people don't end up using, even though I think that these are actually pretty interesting. Bonus level items and bonus luck items work the exact same. They're just affected by different attributes, so we'll just talk about level. So as the formula shows, the amount of items that you're going to get to drop, whoopsies, is going to be equivalent to, let's say we have a 5 to drop by default, like total item says 5. We're going to drop amount equals 5 plus, and then let's say we have a mob level of 3. So mob level of 3, and then whatever number you set for bonus level items here. Let's say we set a bonus level items of just 1. Just you get 1 bonus item per level. 3 times 1. So then you're going to actually end up getting 8 drops instead of 5. If if we set bonus level items to 2, we're actually going to get what, 11? Oh, whoops. We're going to get 11 items to drop. If the mob level was, 10, 25 items are going to drop. Uh, the luck attribute works the exact same way. The formula is the same. You just got to calculate for the luck level, which as shown here, you can use the luck potion, luck enchants, luck attribute, whatever you use. Same way. But these do require that you set one of the total min or max because you need to have a number right here for amount to calculate off of. But that's pretty much it. There's a few examples here at the bottom, but I'm not going to obviously walk through those because it does a pretty good job at doing that. Uh, I hope this video slightly explained or solidified what you already knew about drop tables because the math behind them isn't that complicated. But if you've never heard of the weight system or how it works, yeah, it's nice to be able to know for sure. So again, I would wrap it up by saying I recommend using total items. You can put any total items, or use min and max combined because that's the same as total items, and then use weights. Obviously, if you prefer the other way and you want to just say, okay, I want to drop a minimum of one item, then you can use percents, and it'll do that. It'll do that for you. Yeah. I hope you guys enjoyed. This was a little bit longer than I expected, but I think I covered pretty much everything I wanted to. See you guys in one of the later ones.